I'm here with Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone, and we're going to cover this piece right now. This came out in Time Magazine. It was written by Molly Ball on the 4th of February, and the headline is a little shocking: "The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election." So it's a very long article, and it talks about how all these people got together behind the scenes to make sure that Joe Biden won the election. And they talk about the ACLU, they talk about labor getting together with the Chamber of Commerce and all these business people, and behind the scenes how they were all working together. And so a lot of people have made a lot of hay out of that, which we should, but here's the part I want to focus on. So here's a part of this I want to focus on, because some of it's kind of chilling. This is from Time Frickin' Magazine. "A well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies, working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information." So that's what they're talking about, the shadow campaign. So this is just one small part of it. This is what they did. They worked behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. And just so you know, nothing to worry about. They weren't rigging the election. They were fortifying it. Do you want to know? And they did it all in secret, because that's how you fortify elections, by doing things in secret and not being transparent. So I'm going to show you what they did. For decades, campaigns have grappled with everything from anonymous calls claiming the election has been rescheduled to flyers spreading nasty smears about candidates' families. That's normal politics, right? Well, someone named Laura Quinn, a veteran operative who co-founded Catalyst, she piloted a nameless secret project which she has never before publicly discussed, that tracked disinformation online and how to combat it. In secret. In secret. One component was tracking dangerous lies that might otherwise spread unnoticed. Researchers then provided information to campaigners or the media to track down the sources and expose them. I'm guessing one of those lies wasn't about Papadopoulos not working for the CIA. I guess they didn't track that one down. They didn't do that. Okay. Hang on. We'll keep going. She concluded the solution was to pressure platforms to enforce their rules, both by removing content or accounts that spread disinformation and by more aggressively policing in the first place. Laura Quinn's research gave ammunition to advocates pushing social media platforms to take a harder line. And in November of 2019, Mark Zuckerberg invited 9 civil rights leaders to a dinner at his home. I'm sure he invited them, and they didn't pressure him for a meeting. I'm sure this was his idea. So he invites 9 civil rights leaders to his house for dinner in November of 2019, where they warned him about the danger of election-related falsehoods that were already spreading unchecked. It took pushing, urging, conversations, brainstorming, all of that to get to a place where we ended up with more rigorous rules and enforcement. What that means, rigorous rules and enforcement, that means we had way more censorship being done at our behest through Facebook and Twitter. That's what that means. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, that's what that means. And who said this? Wait till who said that. Who said all this? Who said it took pushing, urging, conversations, brainstorming to get more rigorous censorship? Someone named Vanita Gupta. Who is Vanita Gupta? Well, she's the CEO of Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, and they also met with Jack Dorsey from Twitter. So they're pushing for censorship hard, and they got it. Was it enough? Probably not. Was it later than we wanted? Yes. But it was really important, given the level of official disinformation that they had that had those rules in place and were tagging things and taking them down. So it was successful. It was super successful, this push by these civil rights leaders. Vanita Gupta has been nominated for the Associate Attorney General by She's in the Biden administration. Is not what I guess was a civil rights leader who was pushing for censorship. No true civil rights leader is ever going to push for censorship because they know that is going to immediately be used on actual. Do you think Malcolm X pushed for censorship, or Fred Hampton, or Malcolm X, or MLK? Do you think they pushed for fucking censorship? Those were real civil rights leaders. Vanita Gupta is a tool of the Biden administration, pushing for censorship to shield the establishment from people's free speech. That is kind of amazing. There it is. Biden announces he will nominate Lisa Monaco and Vanita Gupta for top Justice Department posts. By the way, Facebook purges left-wing pages, and there it is. We've covered this. Facebook shuts down socialist websites. Facebook shuts down the major left-wing group in Britain. Facebook disables pages of Baltimore People's Power Assembly, and its administration deletes pages for Struggle, La Luca, and Socialist United Party. And look at this. Here's a dinner with Mark Zuckerberg. That's Barack Obama. That's Steve Jobs. That's Zuckerberg. That's Steve Wesley from the Wesley Group. That's Ann Dore, spouse of the partner from Kleiner Perkins. There's Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google. There's Art Levinson from Green Tech. There's Larry Ellison from Oracle. There's John Chambers from Cisco. There's Reed Hastings from Netflix. There's Carol Bartz from Yahoo. John Hennessy from Stanford. And there's Dick Costello from the Twitter. They're all getting together, hanging out. So that's from Time Magazine, and they don't think this is they don't think this is a bad thing to tell people. Time Magazine thinks this is very cute. What would be your so all I'm saying is, imagine if Trump said, hey, there's a secret cabal working behind the scenes to censor free speech that would hurt the Biden campaign. They would call him crazy. This is what Time Magazine is actually uncovering and almost bragging about. Max, what is your response to this article in Time Magazine?
Well, it just reminds me of a dynamic that played out throughout the Trump era, where early on, when Trump noticed that there were elements within the national security state, within big tech, and within the general architecture of the permanent government that transitions from administration to administration with a predominant ideology of centrism, that he was being targeted by the deep state, that he was called a conspiracist. And they said, Trump, you're crazy. There is no deep state. I remember David Remnick at the New Yorker, he wrote an article about how the deep state simply doesn't exist. Then, as the Trump administration proceeded, there were a flurry of articles about how the deep state not only exists, but it's great because it's fighting Trump, and we need to love the deep state. I don't know if it was Nicholas Kristof at the New York Times who wrote a tribute to the deep state, but then, all of the never Trumpers and the neoliberals, they all became, deep state firsters, or they love the deep state. And so this article, it reflects the same dynamic where basically after January 6th, all these people who effectively are a part of what you could call the deep state and are certainly a part of the Democratic Party's kind of corporate scaffolding and legal scaffolding and big tech as well, they all want credit for taking Trump out because everyone hates Trump so much. He's going to be put on trial effectively. They want credit. They're like, we did it. We conspired. We were a secret cabal. We shut down pro-Trump information. We censored people. We put pressure on the tech giants, and the tech giants are doing whatever we want now. They're in our pocket. We don't know what deals were cut there. Did they say, okay, we won't go so hard on you. We won't try to regulate you and break up your ghastly monopoly, Mark Zuckerberg? We don't know what took place there, but they're proud of what they did. And it's only weirdos like us who see something slightly wrong with it, that basically these people are determining what we see and hear. And we can't go out and say they're violating our free speech rights, because this is all taking place within a private space online, a corporatized space that functions as our digital commons, our cybernetic version of Hyde Park, where there are no First Amendment protections, where they're just vague terms of use set by Jack Dorsey. And now that the Democrats run Congress, I mean, look at Jeff Bezos resigning from Amazon. Why did he do that? For the same reason Bill Gates left Microsoft right as the pandemic hit. The rats are fleeing from the ship because regulation is possible. They might get broken up. They might get hauled before Congress now that the Democrats are in charge, and they're removing all these websites because they want to curry favor with whoever's in power right now. And then there's the other dynamic, which is actually more insidious and more dangerous, which is what we cover constantly at the Gray Zone, is that it's not just Democrats and elected officials who are calling for censorship, or Democratic affiliated activist types like Vanita Gupta, who is, not the worst person when it comes down to the people compared to many of the other people in Washington. It's the national security state. Where do these big tech firms get the big contracts? The CIA. Amazon hosts the CIA's cloud, gets $600 million to do that. Amazon owns the Washington Post. So that's a sort of a conflict of interest from a paper that's constantly quoting unnamed U.S. officials to cultivate public hatred and fear of Russia and China. Amazon has also got big lucrative contracts with the Pentagon. Eric Schmidt at Google is doing the same thing. He's basically a national security contractor. Larry Ellison at Oracle contracts with the CIA. That's why it's based in Northern Virginia. That's what big tech does. And so when the national security state wants to enforce some censorship through its various cutouts, like the Atlantic Council, for example, which is funded by the arms industry. It's funded by the U.S. Department of State, the British Foreign Office, all these Gulf states.
And Facebook they use the Atlantic Council as some kind of arbiter to tell us who should be censored and who shouldn't. And because of you just told us who funds them. It's ridiculous. It's like asking the CIA who should we be deplatforming.
Exactly. And Facebook is consulting with them. Facebook just hired someone named Ben Nimmo, who might be unknown to most of your listeners and viewers, but he's someone I'm really familiar with because he was at the Atlantic Council. He was leading their efforts on censoring and identifying quote unquote Russian bots. And he identified real people as Russian bots and got their Twitter accounts suspended, including a Ukrainian concert pianist who's fairly famous named Val Lisitsa, because she was tweeting things that contravened the NATO line on Russia. She was challenging the official story around the Skripal poisoning, for example. She was challenging the official story around the Duma deception, which Aaron Mate has written a lot about. And so she was identified as a Russian bot by this guy and removed. He's being rewarded for this kind of behavior. He also was, secretly consulting for a British troll farm called the Integrity Initiative. No one even knew it existed until its emails were apparently hacked and then leaked. And it showed that this was Facebook was actually funding it too. But the British Foreign Office was paying tens of millions of dollars to military intelligence officers to create these different clusters of journalists and activists, neocon pundits, to generate a more anti-Russian narrative in the U.S. and throughout Europe, and to attack public officials who were not hawkish enough on Russia. They actually got a national security official in Spain removed after running a smear campaign through the media. But Ben Nimmo is secretly consulting for this group. And he's not a data expert. He's not even a journalist. His former job was as a NATO press officer. So this is who Facebook is hiring to set the censorship agenda. And you can imagine who's in the crosshairs. Right now, of course, it's the far right in the crosshairs. You saw Gateway Pundit get removed from Twitter yesterday. Its founder, Jim Hoft, was removed. I'm not a big fan of him. He's like probably smeared me 100 times in the past. He comes out of that Breitbart world. And but, you know, there's no explanation for why they were censored, except that it seems like the Democrats want them gone. But then you have Socialist Worker, as you pointed out, in the UK. They are like a Trotskyist Marxist group that has been heavily penetrated by police spies in the UK. There have been several scandals where the British police have sent in spies to infiltrate this group, to try to push them towards criminal activity, and now they're removed. And I think that relates to big tech's relationship with the national security state. And I think, you know, they're going to come for people like you next, us next.
Oh, no doubt about it. They're deplatforming everybody who's to the left of Hillary Clinton. Of course, if you're on the corporate algorithm, you will be spared, right? Like the Young Turks are on the corporate algorithm. Jeffrey Katzenberg is one of the most powerful men in media. He's not going to let his $20 million investment in a YouTube company get demonetized. He'll call up the guy, the head of Google. It's not Eric Schmidt anymore. I don't even know who it is, but he'll call him up and say, "Hey, it's the Young Turks. You can't demonetize." And so that they're all covered. And if you're on the Comcast network, you'll be covered. And anybody who's corporate is going to be okay. Right, but it's independent people, and so that's what. Yeah, I know I'm in their crosshairs already.
What we're witnessing is a complete loss in confidence by the centrist elite that really holds power in this country. The military intelligence complex apparatus, big tech, corporate media, aspects of academia, and Congress. They've completely lost faith in the American public. They're terrified of a substantial sector of the American public, which they hold responsible for January 6th, and they're going to apply anti-democratic controls to try to prevent this mob from raging at them. And it's going to affect us in ways we can't even imagine. We are witnessing the growth of the great American firewall.
I mean, just look at this. If this paragraph you don't find this chilling, then I don't know what you're doing. A well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage. A well-funded cabal of powerful people are steering the media coverage and controlling the flow of information. And they do that by censoring people like Max and me. That's how they steer the media coverage and control the flow of information. So nameless secret people are protecting you from other nameless secret people. Sounds like democracy, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the buzzword, I mean, for whenever as it relates to us, I mean, this was all about, you know, suppressing the Hunter Biden story.
Yes.
Hunter Biden and Burisma and Hunter Biden's obvious proven corruption and nepotism. That story was physically disappeared from the internet. It was just deemed disinformation, and it was probably this quote unquote well-funded cabal that was putting pressure on all of the social media platforms to prevent it from being mentioned. But you know, as it relates to us, the buzzword is conspiracy theorist. That if we are branded enough times conspiracy theorists, then the suppression can be legitimized. And I've seen in recent weeks an attempt to brand you a conspiracy theorist by, you know, the Young Turks crowd that was furious at you for the whole force the vote thing. They seized on the fact that you hosted this Boogaloo guy who I'd never heard of before.
Right.
And then proceeded to call, and I saw people just trying to prove that you're a conspiracy theorist. And I'm like thinking, whether you agree with Jimmy or not, whether you agree with what he did, you are using cop language. You're using language that is basically a call for the authorities to censor Jimmy Dore, to say, here's the next Alex Jones, or he's the left-wing Alex Jones. And Alex Jones was actually the first real major media figure in the US who was removed in coordinated fashion by all social media sites. Even Pinterest removed him back in 2017, I believe it was.
Right.
And I opposed it because, I mean, I think Alex Jones is absolutely toxic, mendacious, but this was setting the stage for a much wider campaign of censorship that aims to eliminate all alternative media. So it's obvious your antagonists whose only role is to basically be the socialist branded guardrails for the Democratic Party to keep all of the rebellious youth corralled within the pseudo progressive wing of the Democratic Party. That's their only function. They are trying to just silence you because they don't know what to do with you and they don't have any response. They're not going to argue with you on the merits.
That's exactly right. The Young Turks will never argue the merits. When they argued the merits on Forced to Vote, their own audience turned against them, and I exposed them for being tools of the Democratic Party, and they are, and they're guardians of. They're now attack dogs against actual activists like me. That's what the Young Turks are, and it's obvious to everybody, and it's obvious that's the same thing with The Intercept. They're part of it, and Ryan Grimm, I mean, he just exposed himself. I didn't have to do anything. Everybody saw what Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks did. Everybody saw what fucking Ryan Grimm and The Intercept did. Everybody saw it, and no matter what kind of bullshit tweets they make, everybody sees what's going on. And yes, they will come for me because I'm actually doing good work. They'll never come for the Young Turks because they'll always guard the establishment and push whatever conspiracy that the establishment is pushing, like that Julian Assange can't be trusted. That's what the Young Turks do on the regular. They smear Julian Assange while he's in prison being fucking tortured. They're smearing the journalists. That's what the Young Turks do. And of course they're going to smear me because they've gotten their orders from the Democratic Party. They need another round of funding. Katzenberg is not going to let them be demonetized. And Cenk Uygur got an order to go fucking smear Jimmy Dore, and he did it. And it's obvious to everybody that's what's happening. It's like you'd have to be an idiot not to see what's happening. And everybody sees it, and that's why they're scrambling, trying to smear me as a conspiracy theorist, even though what I did in the Young Turk studios for years was debunk Young Turk's stupid fucking conspiracies. I debunked their stupid conspiracy about Julian Assange working with Manafort and Trump. I debunked that right in real time, and they went on to repeat that CIA talking point and smear Julian Assange, and they've never retracted that. By the way, if that video is still up, they've never taken that down. That's how corrupt the Young Turks are. They're 1,000% corrupt, and everybody sees it. Anna Kasparian talk about, they got upset that I interviewed an unemployed libertarian boogaloo boy, but she goes and tells literal war criminals that it's a great honor to meet them while she's being paid to do that. So anyway, that's what the Young Turks are. I think everybody sees that, but they're going to be safe. They're doing the bidding of the establishment. They're doing the bidding of the Jeff Zuckerbergs, of the Neera Tandons. They had Neera Tandon on their show. They love Neera Tandon now. The Young Turks. They're friends with all of them. So yeah, we see what's happening. This is what's happening. Time Magazine just bragged about what they did. They don't even think there's anything bad. So there will come a time when the Jimmy Dore show will go away. The Gray Zone, we're all going away. So enjoy it while we can. And thank people like the Young Turks, because it'll just be them left. You'll have the Young Turks and whoever is another corporate algorithm, whoever's on the Comcast app, you'll get that, and that'll be it. What's that? MSNBC, people who are on the MSNBC apps or whatever, that's what's going to be left. That's coming. And I know certain people think they're going to be protected. They're not.
I would really advise anyone watching this to go on YouTube and listen to a lecture from 1994, I believe, by Michael Parenti on conspiracy. That was taped by Pacifica at UC Berkeley before an overflow audience. And he takes on this concept of history that's pushed often by, the same kind of centrist or liberal types who saw Donald Trump as uniquely evil and saw the Trump era as the product of one diabolical rogue figure and not a systemic failure or the systemic creation of Trump through the nurturing of an oligarchy in America. And what Parenti puts forward is that history is not accidental. It's not a series of missteps. It's not created by a bunch of individuals, but by material conditions, which are often guided by powerful people, by a powerful ruling class that conspires with one another in order to protect their class interests. So the lecture is called Conspiracy and Class Power. And what you're talking about is a bunch of, is a media organization, which, you know, I almost have, like, I can't watch it. I have no regard for the Young Turks. It was only sort of interesting to me when they started trying to absolutely remove you from the internet, but they, you know, brand themselves as progressive, as even anti-establishment.
Yeah.
They try to curry favor with socialists,
Yeah.
but at the same time,
Yeah.
they are basically advancing the interests of one wing of the American ruling class. And when someone threatens them like you, who was one of them, but then you just move out into the wilderness and just start completely exposing them and discrediting what they're doing and the Democratic Party that gives them their power, that's like their real power base, that's like their Starship Galactica, then they're going to work together with powerful interests to take you down. And so when you start being branded a conspiracy theorist, it's often because you are effectively exposing class power and the various arrangements that are made to protect it, either through disinformation. I mean, the ultimate purveyors of disinformation are the ruling class,
of course,
the national security state. Russiagate was the perfect example. I mean, this was a ruling class conspiracy theory that aimed to drag the U.S. and its population into a massive new Cold War to drive profits and budget for the military intelligence complex and national security state, and to explain away Donald Trump's victory, not as this complete failure of Hillary Clinton, but as a Russian conspiracy, and to delegitimize him, basically eliminate the fact that he won from the public consciousness. And it was permitted, it was tolerated, it was embraced at the highest level. It still is today. So that we always have to pay attention to when that term is used. It's only deployed when people are challenging class power. Sometimes they're wrong and crazy. The QAnon is a conspiracy theory that seems anti-establishment. It's fueled by anti-establishment fervor among the Trump base. They know the system is broken. They're angry. I was at the Capitol on January 6th. People were angry at the system, but they were being led into a political cul-de-sac by this demented conspiracy theory. And so it almost felt to me like QAnon was just a psyop to take all that energy, to take that populist energy and just throw people in a blind alley where they can only go nowhere, and then become the targets of the national security state, which the next day was claiming QAnon is going to carry out insider National Guard attacks on Biden. So we got to lock down the city and bring in more National Guard troops than we have in Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq and Korea combined. So this is the word we're going to be hearing again and again. We need to truly understand the intentions behind its deployment and why it is such a dangerous term. So again, I really recommend watching that lecture by Parenti.
Michael Parenti, people don't know who he is. He's still alive. I've been trying to get a hold of him. I cannot get a hold of him, but he's very old now, and I hear he's frail, so I understand. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.